Part 1. When history teaches us to survive, and no one cares. If you woke up one day without electricity, water, gas, or Wi-Fi, would you still survive? Medieval people did. Hello, friend. You may be curled up in your blanket, eyes gently closed, trying to fall asleep, or simply scrolling through your phone in the middle of the night, looking for some peace in this noisy world. Today I invite you to go back to a time when there was no air conditioning, no supermarkets, no food ordering apps. But there were people who knew how to turn dry moss into fire, turn leaves into medicine, and turn tree bark into bread. It may sound fantastic, but for the medievals, it was a normal day. And tonight's story will be a trip back in time, unhurried, to hear the secrets of survival that we today may have forgotten in our highlighters and convenient plastic containers. In that world, convenience is not something that everyone has. A fire is not a luxury. It is life. There are no lighters, no matches, and certainly no induction cookers. So, when leaving symbolic power for our ancestors, keeping a burning ember was like keeping hope. Hope for a hot meal. Hope for a night without frostbite. Hope for the next journey. At home, people do not bring fast food, but bring hot coals, carefully wrapped in dry moss, in rotten mushrooms, or wrapped in cloth soaked in saltpeter or animal fat, then stuffed into a non-flammable leather bag, a portable firebox. Simple but magical. Imagine this, walking through a damp, cold forest, stopping to set up camp, pulling out a smoldering patch of moss, blowing a few puffs, and poof, fire starts up like magic. No need to strike hundreds of flints, no need to sway in the rain to light wetwood, just a little bit of technique and a belief in smoldering coals. The medievals didn't just survive, they lived with wisdom. They knew that keeping a fire alive was like keeping a warm flame of hope, the only thing that could save you on a snowy night in a thatched hut. And that's just the beginning of a survival guide that's been lost in time. In this video, you'll hear about how to hang meat from the ceiling to both smoke and avoid theft, how to build a living fence from thorns to prevent theft while still harvesting berries, how to preserve avocado in a swamp, and many survival tips are classic, sophisticated, and surprising. So, before you sleep, let the old stories take you on a journey through time where the flickering light of a small fire can be the difference between life and death. If you find this something you've ever been curious about, leave a comment saying, if I lived in the Middle Ages, I would, and think about it. Would you be the one to light the fire? Or borrow coal from the neighbor? Part 2. The Walking Fire. The secret of the medieval pocket fire. As the night descended, bringing with it the bitterly cold winds, the medievals did not look to the lighter in their pockets, but instead carried a piece of glowing coal, carefully guarded as a treasure. They pulled out a piece of dry moss, soft as a thin blanket, and skillfully wrapped it around the still warming embers. The more skillful ones might add a layer of faded mold or a piece of linen soaked in saltpeter or even a bit of animal fat, all to ensure that the embers smoldered burned steadily no matter how much wind and rain or damp night they had to endure. Then the fire bundle is placed in a thick leather bag or hidden in a hollowed out cow horn. Inside, the coal sleeps, does not spread, does not go out, like a promise for tomorrow. People call it a mobile firebox, a simple but powerful survival idea that carries hope through the dark night. And then, when the wind blew the ashes away, just a gentle breath on the embers, the fire would flare up again, flashing like the first notes of a winter symphony. The sparkling firelight illuminated every ripple on the ground, making the cold air become gentle. In that moment, the medieval people could light dry wood, boil cold spring water, and cook their first hot meal after a long day. That small ember not only warmed the body, but also soothed the soul, like a reminder that even in the darkest dungeon, there was always a ray of light that could dispel all fear. Carrying a bundle of fire, people also carry a message of kindness. When passing through a remote village, a flickering light from a small torch is enough for a poor family to find warmth. Please give me a little fire. That hasty request is no longer a miserable plea, but becomes a symbol of sharing. The fire's given, the story is continued, and the village spirit is always bright like a torch in the night. In a world without lighters or matches, the portable fire is a survival tool, an unstolenable trust. It teaches us that sometimes, the most precious thing is not the big thing, but the red embers hidden in the dark, smoldering and waiting for a breath to ignite a new fire. When you hold the fire, you hold in your hands not only the warmth of your body, but also the breath of history of people who lived, loved, and shared on nights without electricity, without water, only fire and hope. Part 3. Smoke and Despair. The art of preserving meat in the mist of the Middle Ages. Where you might think that winter means only falling temperatures and falling snow, the medievals saw in the haze of smoke a chance to survive. Meat, a rare gift from a pig, chicken, or sometimes a hunted deer, was not treasured as a luxury BBQ, but a treasure to be protected at all costs. They did not hang the meat directly in front of a blazing fire, as in science fiction movies, but placed it quietly behind the hearth, where the smoke would condense and smolder, drying the meat without destroying it. Each piece of meat was hung from a beam, high above the reach of children and wild animals. The cold smoke slowly seeped through the cracks in the wood, embracing the meat like a thin blanket, absorbing all the moisture, preventing bacteria from entering and causing trouble. In the thick smoke, all insects lost track, not daring to come near. Bacteria and mold could only drift away. After many days, many weeks, sometimes even months, the meat turned from bright pink to a dark black, not a sign of defeat, but a testament to a complete fight for survival. The smoke here was not the faint scent of sandalwood or straw. It was strong, dense, the smell of dry pine, the pungent smell of burning sedge, carrying the chill of night dew. Middle-class families might season it with salt and sprinkle it, but for ordinary people, smoke was the most expensive seasoning. When they placed the smoked leg on the charcoal stove, the sizzling sound rang out like a song of victory over starvation. In the kitchen, a dirty thatched roof with holes in the ceiling to catch every drop of smoke, people gathered around the flickering light, warming themselves while picking at the tough but smoky meat. There was no noisy freezer, no vacuum box, just smoke, gentle heat, and time. Every day when you opened the door, a wisp of smoke swirled around, bringing you back to the present. But each bite of meat was a pilgrimage to the past, tasting the salty taste of sweat and the hardships of the past. Smoke protects the meat, but at the same time keeps the house warm, repels insects and makes the space strangely alive. Children run and jump in the smoke like scattered souls. The elderly sit huddled under the smoke, eyes half closed but lips smiling when thinking about tomorrow's meal. Smoke is not only a tool, but also a witness to every family story. Every long night and every winter without electricity, without coal, without hope. And if thieves sneak into the village looking for food, the smell of smoke will make them sick before they can even touch the wooden hook for the meat. Because when the smoke smells of despair, anyone will retreat. It is a silent defense system. No sirens, no watchdogs, just the smoke of the poor as a warning. Leave. This is not for you. In the sad voice, smoke is a strange hope. Not burning, not consuming quickly, but enduring like a vow to preserve life. And when you bite into a piece of smoked meat, you are tasting history. The sweetness mixed with the bitterness of the trials, the suffering but not surrender of medieval people. At that time, each puff of smoke, each piece of blackened meat, tells a story of a man who knows how to use the language of smoke to write an epic of survival in the dark night. Part 4. The Living Fence. When trees become sharp fortresses in the midst of windswept fields and deserted country roads, medieval people did not panic and look for workers to drive wooden stakes or wait to buy barbed wire. They believed in the power of trees, not only as a scarce source of wood, but also as a sharp natural shield of fence that lived and strengthened itself over the years. Imagine from the flexible willow branches, the thin thorny branches of the thorny tree, the endless parasols. People skillfully start to join them together like weaving. The crushed branches, threaded through the gaps, interwoven at the base of the mother tree, then bent, overlapped, tied tightly with jute rope or dry grass stalks. Through the meticulous hands, the wall not only protects against animal thieves, but also prevents treacherous people who want to steal some of the newly harvested potatoes. As the living hedge matures, every branch closes in, forming a thorny maze, each eye peering out as sharp as an invisible arrow, ready to block any intruder. But the hedge is more than just a defense. Within the leaves and branches spreads an ecological network. Birds come to nests, bees and butterflies buzz around the wildflowers that grow in between, creating a lush green walled garden, bustling with song and natural fragrance. Over the years, the fence only grows stronger. Unlike wooden stakes that rot easily or stone fences that require lucrative workers, living fences regenerate themselves, healing themselves when a branch breaks or falls. Every spring, they sprout new leaves, putting on a fresh green coat, protecting the house and the garden inside. But the work is not fast-paced. Initially, farmers must use knives to cut a section of the trunk to bend it, a technique called laying, to encourage new branches to grow. It's a delicate, sometimes painful, part of the process. Caring for a living fence is like caring for a loyal friend. Tie it with the right wire and wait patiently each year for the results. And then, when the living fence has blossomed and borne fruit, you can pick mulberries, raspberries, or even walnuts hidden among the thorny leaves. It not only guards your property, but also nourishes your family. The tiny flowers hang down like a natural crown, then bear sweet fruit. The living wall not only protects, but also gives. If you visit an old village in England, don't be surprised to see dense piles of thorns that have existed for hundreds of years. They bear the mark of history. Wars have passed, kings have changed, but the hedges remain as silent witnesses. Each spike is a whisper from generations of ancestors, reminding us that man and nature can combine to create a work that is both sharp, full of life, and strangely lovely. And if one day you need a fence without nails, without paint, without having to buy a new one, just sow branches and take care of it with love for nature. You have touched the ancients' subtle survival secret, the living fence. Not only a border, but also a testament to the immortal song of trees and people. Part 5. Clay battering. The secret of clay blocks that retain heat and cool. When you think of clay, you probably picture worn-out jars or the rough hands of potters. But for medieval people, clay was a natural battery, holding the warmth of summer and the lingering chill of mid. They didn't have modern refrigerators or fireplaces, but they knew how to harness the heat and cooling properties of a thick layer of baked clay, turning their homes and food storage facilities into natural air conditioning systems. On hot summer days, when the sun was scorching the fields outside, people would place wet earthenware jars outside their porches, sometimes half filled with cool water. As the water from the jars evaporated through the tiny holes, it drew the heat out of the jars, keeping the inside as cool as the breath of a mountain stream. People would pour freshly squeezed milk, freshly churned butter, and even jars of light wine into them, so that every afternoon when they returned they would find something refreshing, like a small gift in the heat. In winter, the secret is reversed. The clay bricks are heated red hot behind a wood stove, then placed under grass mattresses, between animal skins, or rolled up in thick wool. When you step into the small, dark room, put your toes on the ground, and you feel the warmth spreading and seeping through your body, like a smoldering ember running through every corner. The clay does not heat up quickly and then die out. It patiently maintains its temperature for hours, allowing sleep to be uninterrupted by the chill. The food storage spaces in the basement and under the house were also built of stone and lined with clay. The thermal mass of the thick earthen walls kept the temperature from rising and falling, so that fruits, vegetables, and bread would not spoil even when a snowstorm was pounding outside. No electricity, no dry ice, just firewood, a pair of skillful hands, and an understanding of simple physics. Clay retains heat. Clay releases heat. On a winter afternoon, when the wind was howling outside, the hot bricks were still silently emitting warmth, making the flickering candle not the only source of heat in the thatched hut. The ancients looked up at the clay walls, not only seeing the building material, but also seeing the footprints of wisdom and perseverance. Clay, with its simplicity and humility, became a durable battery, bringing warmth or gentle cold, the delicate balance between peaceful sleep and survival. When the fire died down, the clay walls continued their story, being loyal friends separating us from the cold and burning of nature. Part 6. Shiny pans. When pebbles created crude medieval Teflon, imagine you've just picked up a thick clay pot, its surface rough as sandpaper, and every time you cook soup, you have to rub it until your hand is worn out. For the medievals, that was unacceptable, so they invented a painstaking process. Take smooth, round pebbles, polished animal bones, or pieces of hardwood, and start polishing the pot while the clay is still slightly damp. Each rotation, each passing stone, gradually compacts the clay particles, sealing the pores so that the surface changes from rough to shiny. The friction glaze, they call it. The work was not quick. A farmer or potter could spend a whole day, or even days, rubbing each pot repeatedly. Sometimes they would soak the sides in a little animal fat, then polish them again, the way we oil an egg before frying it. The result was a surface smooth enough that food wouldn't stick too tightly, making stirring, cooking, and cleaning much less of a chore. And when burnished pans sparkled in the light of the charcoal fire, they were not just cooking utensils but also symbols of craftsmanship and pride. In a dark kitchen, a shiny pan was as precious as jewelry. People considered it the kitchen bling of their time, a testament to skill and meticulous care. To this day, when you wipe your modern nonstick pan clean with a sponge, remember that hundreds of years ago, tireless hands silently transformed the crude clay into the first nonstick coating, with pebbles, dried bones, salty fat, and a little bit of endless patience. When food slides off the surface of the pan without burning, you taste history, the taste of a simple but powerful invention. Part 7. When the ear becomes a compass. The art of sound navigation in the Middle Ages. In the thick fog, when their eyes seemed to betray them, seeing only a hazy whiteness around them, the medieval people did not panic and repeatedly press their compasses, because they did not have compasses. Instead, they listened. The church bells echoing through the forest crevices, the cowbells striking rhythmically on the wet grass, even the wind-whipping bamboo pinwheels or the bells hanging from tree branches making a soft creaking sound. Each sound was a landmark in space, like invisible stars marking the way home. As the caravan wandered through the mist, the leader stopped, closed his eyes, and listened. The church bells rang out to the southeast, a little village they had just left. The echoes, growing fainter as they went, told them they were going the wrong way. When the cowbells sounded off to the right, they turned cautiously in that direction, believing that the neighboring village's cattle were there and that the exit from the forest was near. Village children are trained from a young age. By listening to the echoes of the stream, they can find their way home after picking wild berries. The best hunters do not need to look for animal tracks. They only need to listen to the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the wind blowing through the ravines to know the direction and find their prey. Even the surface of a still lake becomes a sound mirror. With a drill throw of a stone and a resounding plop from the other side, they can roughly calculate the distance and position of the opposite shore. In the Middle Ages, sound not only guided the way, but also opened the cultural story. Every church bell, every wind blowing through a cave, recalled the faith, the work of the fields, the laughter of village fairs. And when night fell, unfamiliar travelers had only to listen to a natural symphony and know that, even without a candle, they could reach their destination safely, thanks to their keen ears and experienced hearts. Part 8. Coal and Teeth. When a piece of firewood turns into a medieval toothbrush. During the days when there was no toothpaste or soft-bristled toothbrush, the medieval people used the only thing they had in abundance: ashes. Imagine a foggy morning, the fire still smoldering from the night before, bits of charcoal scattered on the ground. People picked up a few pieces, pounded them in a mortar until they turned into a fine powder, then mixed them with coarse salt or crushed seashells, and added a little dried basil or ground bark. A crude mixture, but enough to clean tooth enamel. The way to use it is also simple. Dip your finger or a small wooden stick into the mixture, then rub it on your teeth like a modern person uses a toothbrush. At first it feels like chewing sand in a firestorm, but with persistence a few times a week, the plaque will gradually fade. The charcoal gently wears away the stains. The salt helps fight bacteria, and the herbs leave a faint scent, covering up the musty breath after a meal of radish. There was no minty mouthwash or quick-fixed whitening gel. It all depended on the rhythm of your breathing and the strength of your tongue. When a piece of charcoal got stuck in your teeth, you could even use a piece of animal skin or linen to wipe it off, which not only made your teeth shine, but also gave you the confidence to talk to your neighbors, without worrying about them avoiding you because of your breath smelling of rotten nectar. During market days, the sound of vendors brushing their teeth is a sign that they are maintaining personal hygiene. On a festival day, few people dare to come near someone whose teeth are blackened by kitchen ash, because fresh breath is a passport to communication and trade. Black coal not only sharpens teeth, but also sharpens human qualities: patience, endurance, and creativity. And then, when you pick up your modern nylon toothbrush, remember that someone found a way to clean your teeth with coal ash, with his skinny hands, without electricity or chemicals. In every modern smile that sparkles with white enamel, there is still a trace of the indomitable spirit of the gray coal, once the only gift the ancients could give to teeth.
Part 7. When the ear becomes a compass. The art of sound navigation in the Middle Ages. The thick fog, when their eyes seemed to betray them, seeing only a hazy whiteness around them. The medieval people did not panic and repeatedly press their compasses because they did not have compasses. Instead, they listened, the church bells echoing through the forest crevices, the cowbells striking rhythmically on the wet grass, even the wind whipping bamboo pinwheels or the bells hanging from tree branches making a soft, creaking sound. Each sound was a landmark in space, like invisible stars marking the way home. As the caravan wandered through the mist, the leader stopped, closed his eyes, and listened. The church bells rang out to the southeast, the little village they had just left. The echoes, growing fainter as they went, told them they were going the wrong way. When the cowbells sounded off to the right, they turned cautiously in that direction, believing that the neighboring village's cattle were there, and that the exit from the forest was near. Village children are trained from a young age by listening to the echoes of the stream. They can find their way home after picking wild berries. The best hunters do not need to look for animal tracks. They only need to listen to the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the wind blowing through the ravines to know the direction and find their prey. Even the surface of a still lake becomes a sound mirror with a drill throw of a stone and a resounding plop from the other side. It can roughly calculate the distance and position of the opposite shore. In the Middle Ages, sound not only guided the way, but also opened the cultural story. Every church bell, every wind blowing through a cave, recalled the faith, the work of the fields, the laughter of village fairs. And when night fell, unfamiliar travelers had only to listen to a natural symphony and know that, even without a candle, they could reach their destination safely, thanks to their keen ears and experienced hearts. Part 8. Coal and Teeth. when a piece of firewood turns into a medieval toothbrush during the days when there was no toothpaste or soft bristled toothbrush. The medieval people used the only thing they had in abundance: ashes. Imagine a foggy morning, the fire still smoldering from the night before, unswept, bits of charcoal scattered on the ground. People picked up a few pieces, pounded them in a mortar until they turned into a fine powder, then mixed them with coarse salt or crushed seashells, and added a little dried basil or ground bark, a crude mixture, but enough to clean tooth enamel. The way to use it is also simple. Dip your finger or a small wooden stick into the mixture. Then rub it on your teeth, like a modern person uses a toothbrush. First it feels like chewing sand in a firestorm, but with persistence, a few times a week, the plaque will gradually fade. The charcoal gently wears away the stains. The salt helps fight bacteria, and the herbs leave a faint scent, cupping up the musty breath after a meal of radish dot. There was no minty mouthwash or quick fix whitening gel. It all depended on the rhythm of your breathing and the strength of your tongue. When a piece of charcoal got stuck in your teeth, you could even use a piece of animal skin or linen to wipe it off, which not only made your teeth shine, but also gave you the confidence to talk to your neighbors without worrying about them avoiding you because of your breath smelling of rotten nectar during market days. The sound of vendors brushing their teeth is a sign that they are maintaining personal hygiene. On a festival day, few people dare to come near someone whose teeth are blackened by kitchen ash, because fresh breath is a passport to communication and trade. Black coal not only sharpens teeth, but also sharpens human qualities, patience, endurance, and creativity. And then, when you pick up your modern nylon toothbrush, remember that someone found a way to clean your teeth with coal ash, with his skinny hands, without electricity or chemicals. In every modern smile that sparkles with white enamel, there is still a trace of the indomitable spirit of the gray coal, once the only gift the ancients could give to teeth.
Part 9. The Manure Cottage. When mud and straw whisper medieval warmth. When you picture a thatched roof swaying in a snowstorm, swaying precariously on the wet ground, think of a simple yet resilient structure. Walls woven of twigs and plastered with mud. The medievals did not call it architecture, but a skin for the house, sewn from a sheet of frost, covered with a cream of mud, straw, even animal dung, to keep the heat in and keep the cold out. From the flexible willow bundles bent into a mesh frame, the gaps into honeycombs, the house gradually appears like a giant basket. The wattle frame is the art of skillful weaving. Young willow branches, young oak branches, wicker trunks, all are threaded through two fixed wooden pillars, creating a solid natural membrane. Next, people use DOB, a mixture of clay, dry straw, sand, and a little dry cow or horse manure, to brush onto the mesh surface. When this mixture dries, it hardens like limestone, binding the branches into a solid wall, preventing wind from entering, while at the same time releasing moisture outside. In each plastering brush, there are traces of muddy hands, and also a warm heart for the family. People mix manure not only because it is cheap, but because of the magic of microorganisms. Manure increases the adhesion, preventing the wall from cracking under long rains. Tiny cracks are patched, covered with new layers of mud, until the wall surface is smooth, then covered with white lime to reflect the faint light from the oil lamp. In winter, even when the snow piles up outside, inside, the warmth of the fire along with the dry mud blanket keeps the room from ever falling below freezing. There's no artificial insulation, just that crude mixture, but it uses the wonderful principle of thermal mass. It absorbs heat at noon, retains it until night, and then releases it slowly, spreading the warmth throughout the house. And when you touch the walls, feel the warmth and moisture, you not only see clay and straw, but also hear the song of time, the rustling of the willow basket, the sound of blowing fire in the thatched stove, the laughter of children playing on the warm ground. The Wattle and Daub house is not just a place to live, but also a place to tell stories. Stories of farmers through the generations. Stories of plants and families, always in harmony. Stories of a simple but intelligent way of life. When people and land know how to embrace each other, keeping warm for a world without electricity, only mud, straw, and faith. Part 10. Herbal Bed. When fragrance becomes a shield against intrusion. When the night fell and the cold wind blew through the thatched roofs, medieval people not only wrapped themselves in wool blankets, but also relied on scent as a last line of defense. From the time their beds were woven into wooden frames, They were covered with fresh straw bud. Not just any straw. The straw was mixed with bundles of scented herbs, lavender, mint, pennyroyal, wormwood, and sometimes a sprig of warm rosemary. Before spreading the animal skin or linen, the housewife gently sprinkles each layer of herbs, as if hastily painting a picture of nature. The scent blends, not strong, but gentle like the forest wind through the leaves. When a person lies on his back, the lavender branch breaks. The gentle fragrance spreads throughout the space, letting the soul drift lightly among the flower forest. But it is not only a medicine for the mind. It is also an invisible fence, making fleas, bedbugs, and mosquitoes afraid to come near the bed. On a cold winter night, under a thick blanket, straw and herbs retain just enough heat, gently embracing and creating a fragrant blanket that radiates warmth. Every time you turn over, the faint scent of mint awakens your senses, dispelling the stuffy feeling of the cold. The herbal bed not only protects your body from parasites, but also cherishes your sleep, like a smooth love song of heaven and earth, engraved in every breath. Each family had its own secret. Some added a few sprigs of wormwood to repel snakes and centipedes. Others sprinkled asters to ward off nightmares about wandering souls. Some wove small bags embroidered with chrysanthemums, filled with rosemary leaves, and hung them by the bedside as a talisman. Children slept soundly, no longer startled by the buzzing of mosquitoes. The elderly closed their eyes and smiled, feeling the warmth spread by the sweet herbal scent. In the royal castles, herbal beds became the secret of the concubines. A regal sleep with the scent of roses and mint, in rooms carpeted with juniper. Yet the common people also responded, collecting seeds from the roadside, drying them, mixing them with garden straw, creating a simple but powerful harmony of protection. As the gentle dawn breaks, you move your shoulders, the scent of herbs lingering, carrying a blessing for the new day. A morning without mosquito bites, without bedbugs, only fresh scents and sunlight filtering through the window. The herbal bed is a testament to the simple wisdom of our ancestors, turning wild plants into a gentle shield, keeping the body warm, protecting sleep, and opening up a world where even dreams are filled with the scent of village green rice.
Part 11. Cool stone shelves. The natural refrigerator of the medieval people in the humble cottage. Where the thermometer barely shows a mark, the blue-gray stones become a silent savior. The medievals did not have noisy electric refrigerators, but only needed a shady corner facing north, where the sun rarely reached. They placed flat-cut stones, sometimes limestone, sometimes sedimentary rock, silently absorbing the cold of the earth at night and retaining it until day. A stone shelf was built into the wall, half hidden, like a crystal table in the center of the rustic kitchen. When a jug of freshly squeezed milk, a pot of churned butter, or a basket of berries glistening with morning dew was placed on it, the stone kept everything cool, as if the sweat of the night before had never dried. During the day, when the sun was hot through the thatched roof, a damp cloth was draped over the shelf, increasing the evaporative effect, drawing the heat out and making the small space even cooler. The village elders say that if someone wants to preserve food for a long time, they just need to choose a corner of the wall that is exposed to the cold wind, dig deep into a dirt wall and line it with stones. That is the underground cold room, where the temperature is mild all year round. Not too hot to spoil the meat, nor too cold to spoil the wine. In the dark hallway, wet ceramic pots still have drops of condensation, quietly conducting cold inside, so that even a hot noon is not enough to wake up the temperature above a comfortable level. On winter days, the stone still silently holds the cold air from the basement down over the wooden boxes containing pickled radishes, so that the pickled radishes never melt. In noble castles, the air pumped with cold air from deep wells is just an accessory. The owners still make use of the stone shelves in the boudoir to preserve fine wines, fermented cheeses, and fruits imported from the south. Throughout the village, you will see children hiding behind doors, reaching out to catch the cool water dripping from the stone shelves. The sweetness of life, more precious than a rare candy. When a woman sits beside a basket of blueberries, her gentle eyes examining each apple, she knows she holds a miracle of survival. No coal, no salt, no dry ice, just ice and air mixed together to keep food fresh. Stone shelves are not only objects, but also symbols of the harmonious relationship between people and terrain. They have learned to listen to the voice of the stones, knowing how to skillfully place each block so that they can fully exert their heat-retaining power. In the middle of the village on the mountainside, when the dawn breaks, the stone wall does not let out a breath of heat, only a cool breath like a blessing for the new day, an immortal testament to the simple wisdom of our ancestors. Part 12. Cabbage bandage. When wild vegetable leaves soothe wounds, amidst the fevers and the fear of open wounds, the medieval people could not find a tube of ointment or sterile bandage. All they had was a cabbage leaf, thick, cool, and infused with the scent of the countryside. When a swelling appeared, or a splinter of wood fell on the flesh, the craftsman would take a leaf from the garden, soak it in a clear stream, and carefully place it on the wound. In their hands, the leaf curved around the edges of the peeling skin, each green vein giving off a cool breath. like a mother's embrace, soothing the pain. Before covering the area with a layer of linen soaked in honey or olive oil, the hands gently knead the leaves to activate the essence. Organic acids and organic sulfins hidden in each cabbage leaf cell penetrate the skin, antibacterial, reduce swelling, and quickly draw out blood stasis. Herders say that when a horse steps on their foot, they overlap several layers of cabbage leaves like messengers of nature. Then tie them tightly with hemp rope. The wound dries quickly and does not become inflamed. In the thatched hut, the candlelight flickered, and the cabbage leaf became the only bandage. Sometimes, after a night, the golden layer of leaves not only absorbed the pus and heat, but also retained the sweet water of peace of mind, knowing that even without medical knowledge, people could still be healed by simple, rustic wisdom. As you stretch your lips and smile, remembering the lush green cabbage leaves, imagine yourself holding in your hands an undiscovered gift, a wild leaf, full of life, ready to soothe pain, like a comforting song from the Middle Ages. Part 13. Red lamp. The bacon candle brings the warmth of incense smoke in the dead of night. When all lights were reserved for temples and noble families, commoners relied on something cheap and surprisingly effective: greased reeds. Imagine a swamp path where tall reeds tower over people in the silence. In the fall, when they saw the silvery reeds for themselves, they plucked them up, peeled off the outer shells to expose the soft core, and soaked them in lard or mutton fat that ran across the stove. After many hours of soaking, each reed becomes a long, spongy, grease-filled wick, ready to smolder. When night falls, they simply stick a reed into a simple iron clip or clay bowl, light it, and the flickering light, with a faint smoky smell of burning grease, like the aroma of cooking, fills the house. Each red lamp only lasts from 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the thickness and humidity, enough to light more firewood, mend clothes, or quickly read a bowl of plain porridge before going to bed. The strange thing is, with reeds, people can measure time by the light of the fire. When a lamp is almost burned out, they know that about 15 minutes have passed, enough time to watch the pot, check the traps, or count the crowing of the rooster at night. When the lamp goes out halfway, they gently put the fire back on, without needing to strike a match, without fear of throwing sparks. The light of the reeds is like the breathing of the house, measuring sleep and work, drawing a symphony of time with the flame. In the moment the reeds flashed, the picture wall reflected the cracks and scattered straw, the sizzling sound of the melted fat, the gentle dripping sound like a lullaby, comforting people after a hard day's work. The reed lamp not only provided light, but also carried the warmth of the burning fat, dispelling the cold streaks of the leaves, allowing the shivering hands to gradually expand, and the numb toes to no longer be numb. In the thin smoke, women sew, men sharpen knives. Children draw sparkling shadows on the wall, imagining the monster at the bottom of the well. Old people sit in dark corners, listening to the sound of fire in silence, as if collecting all their hardships in their hearts. The reed lamp is a loyal friend, asking for nothing but fat and reeds, ready to light up the long night, keeping the roof from sinking into nothingness. And if one day you find your house suddenly without electricity, try to remember the grease-soaked red lamp, the ancient lamp of our ancestors, both smoky and smelling of burning grease, and warm and comforting, as a simple reminder that true light sometimes comes from the simplest things. Part 14. Swamp butter. The cream in the black mud. In the midst of the long winters, when fresh milk became scarce and food became a precious commodity, the medievals discovered a magical preservative: bog butter. They carried jars of freshly squeezed butter, wrapped them in oak bark or birch, and buried them deep in the bogs, where the soil was so cold and anaerobic that microorganisms had difficulty growing. There, the velvety black mud wraps around the butter, creating a natural freezer without the need for dry ice or refrigeration. The tannins in the peat prevent bacteria from breaking down fat, extending the butter's shelf life for years, even decades. When people return to dig it up, the once golden butter is now a dark brown, its surface slightly damp with the smell of damp soil, but each layer inside is still soft and smooth, retaining its rich flavor. The flavor of bog butter speaks like a story of a wild land, a hint of yeast, a bitter note of peat, and a soft, creamy taste like a lullaby of winter. It is a gift from nature to families who know how to bury their hope in the bog. On a cold night, a slice of bog butter placed on toast, melting on the tip of the tongue, giving off a rich aroma, enough to give strength to plow the new day. But to get the perfect butter, one must choose the right bog, not too many streams, not to dry and bury it to the right depth, usually more than a meter. After a spring, they dig it up, wipe off the mud, quickly soak it in spring water to reduce the harshness, and then treat it with salt or wine to kill the bacteria completely. The process is like a festival of rebirth. The butter goes into the ground and is reborn in the kitchen, ready to fuel the harshest days. Today, when you open your refrigerator and find a cold jar of butter, remember that thousands of years ago, our ancestors invented their own way of freezing the dark swamp. They had no chemical preservatives, just mud, water, and a strong faith. Swamp butter reminds us that sometimes the secret.
Part 14. Swamp butter. The cream in the black mud in the midst of the long winters, when fresh milk became scarce and food became a precious commodity. The medievals discovered a magical preservative, bog butter. They carried jars of freshly squeezed butter, wrapped them in oak bark or burlap, and buried them deep in the bogs, where the soil was so waterlogged, cold, and anaerobic that microorganisms had difficulty growing. There, the velvety black mud wraps around the butter, creating a natural freezer without the need for dry ice or refrigeration. The tannins in the peat prevent bacteria from breaking down fat, extending the butter's shelf life for years, even decades. When people return to dig it up, the once golden butter is now a dark brown, its surface slightly damp with the smell of damp soil, but each layer inside is still soft and smooth, retaining its rich flavor. The flavor of bog butter speaks like a story of a wild land, a hint of yeast, a bitter note of peat, and a soft, creamy taste like a lullaby of winter. It is a gift from nature to families who know how to bury their hope in the bog. On a cold night, a slice of bog butter placed on toast, melting on the tip of the tongue, giving off a rich aroma, enough to give strength to plow the new day. But to get the perfect butter, one must choose the right bog, not too many streams. Not to dry and bury it to the right depth, usually more than a meter. After a spring, they dig it up, wipe off the mud, quickly soak it in spring water to reduce the harshness, and then treat it with salt or wine to kill the bacteria completely. The process is like a festival of rebirth. The butter goes into the ground and is reborn in the kitchen, ready to fuel the harshest days. Today, you open your refrigerator and find a cold jar of butter. Remember that thousands of years ago, our ancestors invented their own way of freezing the dark swamp. They had no chemical preservatives, just mud, water, and a strong faith. Swamp butter reminds us that sometimes the secret to preservation lies not in high technology, but in the heart of the earth, where seemingly nothingness is the seed of life.
Part 17. The bankruptcy, the pandemic in the village, and the medical cover of nature. When the plague swept through the village gates like a poisonous wind, robbing the warmth of bodies and the laughter of children, the medieval people faced utter confusion. There were no hospitals, no antibiotics, only gray skies and empty fields. They called this period the famine, when strength, faith, and food were all depleted. But even in that dark night, nature whispered to them life-saving clothes: bark, clay, ashes. First, the bark, not just any bark, but thin beech or pine bark, from which young pieces of bark, the cambium near the outer bark, were taken. They were ground into a pale white powder and boiled thickly with warm spring water. This liquid extract was considered a spirit of medicine. The bitter taste stung the throat, but it also reduced fever, soothed chills, and reduced inflammation in the lungs. The scent of the resin lingered around the wooden house, a sign of hope in the midst of the malaria. In addition, clay, a seemingly inanimate substance, plays the role of a universal bandage. Patches of festering skin and dry ulcers are covered with a smooth layer of clay, mixed with a little vinegar or urine from a healthy person. The clay absorbs all toxins, dries the wound without giving bacteria a chance to take refuge. When the layer of mud dries and peels off, it is followed by the necrotic patches, blood and pus, and the burning pain gradually fades into the past. A few handfuls of ash left in the kitchen, which was supposed to be used for cleaning, were used as disinfectant powder. Mixing the ash with finely ground oyster shell powder and sea salt, people sprinkled it on a wet bandage, then wrapped it around the wound. The strong alkaline ash, antiseptic salt, and lightly ground oyster shells that help remove dead skin all combined to create an antibacterial mixture that the villagers jokingly Hellas powder because of its miraculous antibacterial properties. Not only did the medieval people dissolve bark, clay, and ash in water, they also used hot oil to massage and acupressure points from horse fat, lard or olive oil mixed with dried flower petals, mint leaves, and then warmed over hot coals. The hot oil penetrated deeply, helping to circulate blood, reduce numbness, and push the chill out of every muscle. When the oil and bark balm were combined, the wound was soothed, the pain gradually decreased, giving the patient a bit of calm in the midst of chaos. In the darkness, as the candle flickered, the old folk medicine woman opened her handwritten notebooks, rough brown pages filled with meticulous folk recipes. They blew on a thin knife blade, cutting the bark to increase the essential oil, sprinkled ash on the powdered herbs, then gently rubbed it on the temples, pressed the arca points under the heels to reduce coughs and eliminate colds. Each time they pressed a point, they whispered, "Let the forest trees and Mother Earth heal you." And when the storm subsided, when the village bell rang to signal a peaceful day, the villagers looked back at the clay wall, which once sheltered the wounds, and the large tree by the pond, which once kept the secret of precious medicine. The dead passed, leaving smooth scars on the skin of people's hearts, but deep in their memories was a testament to the power of common wisdom. In the midst of the epidemic, just look down at the tree, look up at the sky, you can still find a little hope. From the bark, clay ash, and the heart that refuses to let go. Part 19. Talented hands forge weapons from nature in the midst of the deep jungle and vast steppe. When the thunder of battle still echoes in legend, power does not come from refined steel in the forge, but from the patient hands of carpenters, stonemasons, lumberjacks. They turn tree branches, stones, animal bones, and faded iron veins into sharp weapons, like vivid paintings, telling the story of survival and glory of an entire village. The forester skillfully selects a fresh piece of wood, usually pine or ash, and bends a soft bough. He examines each grain on the tree trunk, using a thin knife to score the bark, creating softness and a regular bough return. When the dawn light filters through the foliage, the bow resembles a silken wind, both flexible and full of strength. The bowstring, a flexible hemp rope or fish intestines, is pulled taut between the two ends, like a lifeline connecting man to nature. Nearby, the plumer was gently plucking peacock and duck feathers, threading each feather onto the straight shaft of an arrow. The feathers were not only decorative, but also guided the arrow as it flew fiercely, following the trajectory of life and death. The arrow was made from a piece of deer antler polished with pebbles, sharp and sharp. When inserted into the quiver, it carried the sweat and days of polishing, ready to fly faster than the beating of a heart. In the hearth across the courtyard, the blacksmith hung a pile of rusty iron veins of iron collected from the swamp, heated red-hot with charcoal. With each blow of the hammer, the pliable metal was shaped into an axe, a dagger, or a short sword. The sound of the hammer hitting the anvil sounded like a war drum, each blow an oath to protect the village. The blade gradually revealed its curve, glowing red with the fire, then was tempered in the cold lake with a hissing sound, a fateful moment between fire and water. Ancient stone weapons still stand. Stone spearheads jut out next to metal tools, reminders of primitive times. Stonemasons have chiseled away pieces of quartz or agate, forming stone axes, knife points, and sharp arrowheads. The edges glint with a dull light, like the fury of lightning trapped in the stone. Each axe shows signs of craftsmanship, the etching of a stone blade, the burnishing of a fire. Weapons were not only used for attack but also for cultural purposes. Spear shafts were carved with the image of a patron saint. Dagger handles were carved with the image of a falcon, and the patterns were curved like waves. The warriors carried with them not only weapons, but also the songs of their ancestors, their belief in the sacred world. When the drums of assembly sounded, the whole village gathered in the open field. Each thin iron helmet, forged from recycled iron pieces, reflected the light of the campfire, creating a thin layer of silver before the starry sky. The spears pointed high like a 1,000-year-old rock, creating a majestic picture of survival. Children clapped their hands in joy, and the village elder nodded proudly. Talented hands had turned nature into strength. Each weapon was a blessing and a hope for a peaceful tomorrow. Imagine an arrow whizzing through the air, aimed at the heart of life, a sword gliding through ashes, leaving a trail of red fire, a stone axe revealing every scratch, all born of earth, water, fire, and wind. These are not just weapons but the voice of nature, crystallized in every hammer blow, every groove on the blade, and every bowstring full of life. In the medieval world, the talented hands of craftsmen forged not only weapons, but also the indomitable spirit of a nation, where glory and survival blend together in the pulse of history. Part 20. Wildflower. Anesthetic. The fragrance that leads to sleep amidst chaos. When night fell after a day of racing against the dangers of hunger, cold, disease, and fire, and their bodies were tired and ready to give up, the medieval people sought out the wild fields, where wildflowers bloomed under the silver moonlight. Among them were flowers that seemed fragile, but had a magical calming effect. Wild lilies, edelweiss wild roses, and tiny purple violets. They were picked while the dew was still on their petals, then dried in the shade, preserving the essence of dawn. When the night engulfs the thatched roof in the deep, silent forest, the housewife mixes a handful of dried flowers into a cup of warm water, covers it tightly, and lets the fragrance rise gently like a lullaby. The vapor spreads through the room, seeps into the lungs, calms the breathing, and pulls the tired eyes into a peaceful sleep. The drops of wildflower essential oil contain a gentle sedative that soothes anxiety, slows the heart rate, and dispels the worries of a long day. The ancients did not know about modern chemical compounds, but they felt the soothing effect. When dried violets were mixed with wild honey, a small spoonful before falling asleep was enough to lull the soul into a dream where there were no more alarm bells, no more wind whistling through the thatched roof. The scent of wild lavender, mixed with a touch of forest herbs, brought a feeling both familiar and mysterious, like a temporary death of anxiety before the harsh world. Before wrapping themselves in thick blankets, they gently sprinkle a few dried flower petals under their pillows, creating a medicinal pillow that increases its effectiveness. During times of war or pandemic, pills made from wildflowers are a lifesaver for lost souls, providing a moment of absolute peace, enough for the body to regenerate its vitality. And when dawn awakens, even though there are still challenges outside, people wake up refreshed, ready to face them. Wildflowers are not only a sedative but also a reminder. No matter how fierce the storm, the miracle of nature still exists, helping people find peace in the midst of chaos. Conclusion: when the past whispers lessons for the future now, when the portable fire has gone out, the smoke that preserved the meat has dissipated, the living fence has sheltered, the clay battery has warmed, the polished pan has cooked, the sound has guided, the charcoal has cleaned, the wattle and daub hut has stood tall, the herb bed has sheltered sleep, the stone shelf has stored food, the cabbage leaf has soothed wounds, the reed lamp has awakened the dim light, the marsh butter has nourished the soul, the hollow tree has hidden its secrets, the bar cake has satisfied hunger, and the poverty has revealed its healing miracle. All seem to be but small pieces of the medieval survival puzzle. But behind each of these secrets is the image of resilient, creative people who always listen to nature. They have no refrigerators, heaters, machines, or chemicals, only moss, smoke, thorns, clay, coal, sand, weeds, and patience. Every detail, no matter how small, when placed in a situation of scarcity, becomes a guiding light for life. Today, in a world of convenience and luxury, we absolutely forget these simple lessons. We forget that even a piece of soft coal in a leather bag can kindle the flame of hope, that thick smoke can not only smoke meat, but also the family hearth, that a hedge growing from tree branches can keep out intruders, that lifeless clay and stone are refrigerators that do not require electricity, that a simple cabbage leaf can save a life. And when the power goes out, the water goes out, the heating breaks down, you're hungry or sick, it's those old tricks, seemingly old-fashioned, that come to the rescue. Because the quintessence of technology lies not only in its complexity, but also in its return to simplicity and originality. Before you leave the medieval world in your mind, ask yourself, which of these tips do you find most familiar? Have you ever wondered if you could start a fire with dry moss? Or would you try making friction glaze with pebbles? Or simply remember the scent of herbs in your sleep? This medieval survival story is not just for history buffs, but for anyone who wants to connect with the source of human creativity and resilience. Let these lessons inspire you. In modern life, when faced with a problem, you may find the solution. In the woods, in the clay, in the hollow of a silent tree, or in a lush green cabbage leaf. Thanks for joining me on this journey through 20 medieval survival secrets. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. And share in the comments which tips surprised you the most, so we can all cherish the past and innovate for the future. See you again where history echoes and we can still learn the world from a piece of moss, a bark, or a lump of clay. May you always keep the fire in your heart and hope in every step.